Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show with a guest you are already familiar with. Welcome back to my show, Dennis Pratt.
Thank you, Andreas.
We already had the first talk about the Libertarian Party National Convention where Donald Trump showed up, and we already talked about a little bit about your town project in New Hampshire. And today, like I promised, like in May, I guess it was when you were last back on my channel, well, you talked about to me that you have several slides about the project of the Freetown and that you have slideshows you want to tell us and strategies for achieving libertarianism in our lifetime, where you can concentrate an amount of the population to a certain point and then achieve liberty there. And this is a topic I'm really interested about, and I would like to hear more about that. So, would you like to say a few words in advance, or should we right start with your slideshow?
No, I'll just preface it by saying that we've had over 20 years of experience with concentration strategy. We've had extraordinary success, and of course, we think that everyone should be moving to New Hampshire if you truly love liberty. But there's a lot of people who are, for example, stuck in Germany, and they can't figure quite out how to get over here. And so, what I've done is actually go through and pull out all the different lessons that we've had, that we've learned from our experiences of 2 decades. And in a way, that kind of informs you. I've also worked on the math a little bit to kind of give you a sense of how long a project like this might take, given different size regions. Um, and what I'd like to leave you with is hope that a liberty for real society is actually possible. So I'm going to go through some slides that will talk a little bit about the various strategies that we've had to try to achieve a liberty for real society. I'll focus then on the concentration strategy, why it's actually makes sense. I'll talk about the best example of it, which is the one that I'm in, which is the Free State Project. We've had the longest experience, and we know the most about it from there, and we've had probably the most success. And then I'll talk a little bit about how to utilize these lessons for other states, other countries, and what that might look like. And my invitation is that if anybody's out there is at all interested in doing this, if you have a group, just DM me. I am available to support any freedom efforts that actually might work. And I'm telling you, the concentration strategy works. So if you're at all interested in doing this, DM me, and we'll set up a kind of a private discussion with you and or your group.
Great. I will put the links to your social media, like the Twitter or stuff, in the video description. Well, maybe just in the first place, when you already said you are trying to make the concentration strategy work since several years. Like, what would you say was like a start, the beginning point of where you're trying to focus your libertarian strategies, and when you realize sudden things work and what doesn't work, or if there will be in the slides, I don't have to take that away.
Sure. Are you talking about in general, or are you talking about me personally?
No, in general,
Yes.
we already, I think we talked in the first part of our conversation when you were like in the libertarian movement for what I think 40 years, and first you were a democratic socialist, and how you found your path. So everyone who's interested in your personal way, I think we can get back to our first conversation, just like more the general strategy right now.
Yeah, the concentration strategy as employed by the Free State Project in New Hampshire, and modified by other people. Was first suggested by Jason Sorens in 2002. And basically, what he said was, "Hey, look, I study secessionist movements, and here are some kind of requirements of secessionist movements. One of the key ones, though, is concentrating." Now, he didn't actually use the words. I'm the one who actually talks about the different strategies and concentration strategy. But the idea was to migrate libertarians to one location small enough where we actually would have sufficient numbers to affect not just the political scene, but also the culture and set up different communities. And that was so that 2002, the paper came out. A lot of people, this was early internet, a lot of people on the internet in those days were libertarian. And he got a lot of feedback, and he was a little bit surprised. But basically, people said, "Yeah, let's do this." So he got a whole bunch of commitments from people that they would move to a particular region, and then they went through a long process where they had to pick which state in these United States would they select for
Mhm.
the quote unquote free state to which everyone would move. The criteria were there were many. There was good arguments. There were festivals held, especially in New Hampshire. Political leaders in the various states were queried about their interest in supporting it. The criteria, basically everything came down to New Hampshire, and New Hampshire was clearly the number one choice. But yeah, there were other states that were pretty high up there, Alaska, Wyoming, things like that. But the idea was that it had to be a kind of a low population, small region uh, type of location with other amenities. And I'll kind of go
Mhm.
into that in the slides. So from 2003, the idea was okay. We're gonna get 20,000 people, 20,000 libertarians to sign up, and we will move those 20,000. Once we have the sign up, then we'll go ahead and say the move is triggered, and you have 5 years to move to New Hampshire. Um,
Yep.
Now, of course, I'll talk a little bit about diffusion and some of the errors that we've made. This is an open kimono talk where I actually talk about what worked and what didn't work. That was one of the things that didn't work. It took us about 15 years to get to the point where we got 20,000 people who at least nominally said that they would move. And now, since then, we're in I think year 7 since the move was triggered. But that's all with my diffusion curve that I'll share with you. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about the pitfalls that we fell into and how you can kind of avoid them, because you may as well learn from the granddaddy of them all, the free state of New Hampshire.
Mhm. Mhm. What we already talked about in advance, just 1 second, and then I will bring up the slides, is we wanted to go through the numbers, because when you say 20,000 people, that is a number referring to the United States. And this might not apply to Germany or any other state in Europe, wherever people just want to achieve some of some kind of a similar solution.
Yeah, and I'll go through the math that's required to figure out, given
Great.
the overall population from which you're drawing, kind of what's a reasonable region to target, and what the time frame looks like on that.
Great. So let me bring up the slides and then I give you the control over it.
All right, thank you.
So here we are.
Okay, so I call this "Build Your Own Free State," and we're going to be applying the lessons of the Free State Project in New Hampshire to liberty in your state. Now, my free state friends here in New Hampshire would be complaining like heck if I don't mention that, of course, we think that you should be moving to New Hampshire. But this is for those of you who just are not listening to us and think that you want to stay in your state or country. But I would like you to still be successful, and you can be successful. So there's a libertarian dream, and we kind of get infected with this. I know I did when I moved from a democratic socialist to libertarian. I just could see this future of voluntary living, of consensual win-win relationships, of not using coercion against each other, of not buying into a psychopathic um, system. And I was going, this is how we ought to be living. This is how I want to live, you know. But of course, then the question is, how do you do it? And the reality is that we live in fairly authoritarian world. Every single state is an authoritarian world, and it's run by probably the worst psychopaths that they can find, the people who are the least libertarian, the people who are most willing to use violence to aggress against their neighbors. And then we have the general population who accepts this as normal. You know, the ones that are the people who kind of say, "Hey, this is kind of insane." We've been weeded out. You know, either beheaded in past centuries and you know, gulagged out and that type of thing. So it's amazing to me. You know, people often will say, you know, why aren't there more libertarians? And it's amazing to me that any of us have actually survived, that the characteristics that allow us to be libertarians have survived. I think we have been devolved into a population of people who are much more aligned with authoritarianism. But the question becomes, okay, well, if that's true, what about the few of us who are really kind of interested in this? Because the cost to us libertarians is really high. We waste our lives on trying to convert people who are basically inconvertible. You know, libertarians kind of give up over a fairly short period of time. I've been in this for 43 years, so but I'm particularly mule-headed. There are most libertarians aren't as mule-headed as me. And there are a few who just kind of keep on going. But you know, there's this feeling a free society is really impossible. And so we're left with this question: is freedom actually possible? How can we actually achieve it? Or is it achievable? And of course, those who rule us want us to give up, right? They want us to say, no, it's not possible. So we've had, you know, libertarianism. It depends on when you count. You know, I won't go to Laos to kind of ancient Chinese philosophies and things like that are kind of libertarian and stuff. But you know, for sure, we've had at least 5 decades of testing intensively different strategies for getting to a liberty for real society. And hundreds of thousands of libertarians have been experimenting with this, and we've done it, you know, certainly across the 50 states in the U.S., but also across countries. You know, I'm sure that in Germany and in other places in Europe, you've tested different strategies, and there's a large number of strategies that have been tried, and we have empirical results for those trials. So the question is, can we assess how well these strategies work? Which ones seem to work better and which ones seem to work worse? Now, I've been in this long enough that I've actually tried most of these strategies. And I have the scars to show from them. So I'm going to go ahead and just go with a quick little taxonomy on what the strategies are, so that you can say, oh, yeah, I've tried that, or yeah, no, that's the next one I was going to try. The most important one is probably conversion. That's the one that we probably all try to do. John Stossel in the U.S. is probably a great example of that. He tries to explain libertarianism from a common sense perspective, and this makes sense. And he does a wonderful job of it. The trouble is that conversion turns out to be extraordinarily hard. And even those of us who are rather good at conversion, we convert very, very, very few people. And usually we think that we've converted them, but we really haven't. Now, for my analysis, the type of a person who can become libertarian is actually a fairly unusual intersection of characteristics. They require these characteristics to become libertarian. So I don't think in my decades, I've come to the conclusion that libertarianism isn't something that we can actually convert the general population. They have had these characteristics selected out of them. So if you're trying conversion, I wish you good luck, but just know that when it fails, and it's going to fail often, don't blame yourself. Better people than you have tried it and have failed consistently. Um, Now, another thing that I've tried to do was go with analogous types of movements. So, for example, I did a lot of stuff in alternative schooling, in homeschooling, right? Because the schooling is really where the authoritarian mindset is taught. Um, and I've also done work in personal growth. There is an analogy between those who want to improve themselves and want to express who they are out in the real world, and libertarians who also want to express themselves out in the real world without psychopaths trouncing them down. I won't go into the details. I can, but my experiences in these, and that they were fairly significant efforts, was that it's still not that's still not a path to a liberty for real society. We have a number of people who innovate, including myself, and that's create businesses that get around government control. In the United States, Uber would be, the workaround around taxi cab medallions, where the government was giving to cronies these taxi cab medallions, and you could only do taxi cabs if you had government blessing. And then Uber came in and basically innovated around it. The trouble is that, yeah, government's slow and stupid, but eventually they do start regulating it and they start controlling it, and it gets back into government control. Those are the supplanting strategies. There's electoral strategies, and for sure the third party one, the Libertarian Party in the U.S., is probably the most famous. But we have Liberty Republicans, where we're working inside of Republican parties. We have becoming kind of a power trader. So we saw the Libertarian Party actually doing this with the Libertarian Party convention this last year, where they basically said, "Hey, we have this population. You appeal to us and come up with policies that we like." And then there's a lot of work on single issues that are liberty issues. I'm working on one right now, which is medical aid and dying. And then there's supplication, supplicating our masters. The best one is Cato Institute, that comes up and says, if you want to be a good ruler, here's how you can set up your government and get the most taxes and that type of thing. There's also camouflage, which is pretending that you're an authoritarian, going and rising up in an organization, and then start to actually do things that are kind of libertarian-esque, right? That a number of us have tried those types of things. The trouble is that once you start showing that you're not a psychopath, the psychopaths pretty much quickly get rid of you. And of course, there's just begging. Please don't trounce on me. There's shaming. Reason Magazine, a lot of our podcasts spend a lot of time and say, "Can you believe these idiots?" There's fighting in courts. You trying to use other branches of the government to try to get around. In the U.S., we have Institute for Justice that fights for libertarian values, and very good in very constrained situations, but extremely slow. And of course, there's insurrection, which we don't talk about because, of course, we would never consider it, even though the U.S. was built on an insurrection against an unjust government. There's also insulation, where we try to build parallel institutions and try to get away from government, go underground. The crypto, homeschooling, homesteading, guns. We see this a lot, where these little enclaves are created, and they try to stay underneath. Agorism, prepping. This category here is where I think a lot of us eventually fall into denial, and it's just like, oh man, this just seems so hard, and so you become kind of a closet libertarian, and you try not to blow up cocktail parties, right? Or you go into stoicism, right? Stoicism is a beautiful philosophy, but it's a slave philosophy, right? It's a philosophy of they're going to do things to you, and how do you actually maintain your sanity and your personal independence, even though you are a slave? And but I think I actually have done a lot of work in that area as well. There's a lot of people who give up and they just become apathetic. The worst situations for me are when the libertarians really give up and they just say, "Yeah, we have to be more authoritarian than they." And this is the alt right in the U.S. Movement. Um,
Mm.
and then there's
Can
just
I
depression.
have a little question about that becoming authoritarian? There are sometimes people telling, I was once a libertarian and then I suddenly noticed this doesn't work. It completely, to me, falls into that stage of denial. But I think always when I look into that, I think they never really got libertarianism. They
Mm.
always contradict themselves by explaining stuff like property rights or anything else. So this stage of denial, like becoming authoritarian, I think it's still a different stage from never really gotten libertarianism and why libertarians do that. And we got it, but we think, well, it just doesn't work in reality. What's your opinion on that? Is that are
Oh
these
yeah,
two different things, or
no, I agree. I agree. And as a matter of fact, I had a debate at Porc Fest this year with Gene Epstein, who's the head of the Soho Forum. And my argument there is that the people who come in with consequential arguments, well, if you prove consequentially that libertarianism is unquote impossible, they're fine with going ahead and doing authoritarian things. But I come in with more of an ethical, deontological perspective of how libertarianism is required to be the minimum requirement to be a good human being. Of course, I
Mhm.
want to be well above that, but the minimum requirement is not to aggress, not to enslave your neighbor. So it would be really hard for me to slip into there because it would be I don't think I could sleep at night, right? I would
Sure,
be
yeah,
doing something that I know is evil. So
yeah,
libertarian is, who's a libertarian? We could talk about that. I'm using libertarian to be very, very broad. Um, and it's hard to talk about it because, of course, if I say ethical libertarians, now the size has shrunk quite a bit, where we have really good allies who are really just kind of consequential on most areas. They're not libertarian like you would say, Andreas, but they're really good allies. They work really hard. The Free State has a lot of
yeah.
those, and I'm willing to
It's
say, yeah, you're my brother. Now, do I think that if things really went hard, that they would falter? Maybe they would. But I do think that there are different degrees of libertarianism. For me, libertarianism is a pathway.
mm,
I learn more. I've been on this path for 43 years. I've studied it and written about it. I've written almost 2,000 articles in libertarian ethics, and it's a
yeah.
pathway. It's a journey,
Sure. I
and
just think
it gets shocks. We get shocks to it.
I just think there is a huge difference because I think in the United States, like even Ronald Reagan, like 50 years ago, already referred to himself as a libertarian. Now Donald
Mm.
Trump does it. So it does this term really mean anything anymore?
Right.
But
Yes.
in Germany, this is not the case. In Germany, hardly 5 years ago, anyone ever referred to himself as a libertarian. The like even the term libertarian is not even in the mindset of people
Mhm.
like earlier than 5 years ago for very few people in a really small community maybe, but not for the for most people. But it starts growing, especially with people like Javier Milei and stuff. But yeah, so I just because you said there are you're using this term really broadly. I get it. Of course, it's like a pathway, but it then needs more clarification on what you actually mean by referring to yourself as libertarian. Yes, sure.
Yes, and I'll actually go a little bit into that because one of the errors that we made early on with our estimates of how long it would take was we were using very happy definitions of libertarians. And it turned out that those were not libertarians in the sense that they really wanted to live in a liberty society, that they would actually move and things like that. So,
Mm.
um, the happy estimates of 15%, 20% that Cato often did in the U.S. Based on 3 policy areas. Those are it's hard to call them what you and I would say are libertarian. I'm kind of really big tent, so I welcome anyone along this path. I honor anyone along the path. I think this is a hard path to follow, and I'm so happy when someone actually has the gall to step up and start walking down it. And it's hard because you're, at least in the United States, especially if you're not in a concentrated area like New Hampshire, you're alone, and you're doing this
Yes.
despite everybody telling you you're a fool and, oh my goodness, just shut up, just be realistic. That's not the world we live in. Yes, I know it's not the world we live in. That's the point.
Yeah. Also, I might want to add, I think it really takes guts to stand up to everyone around your area. And if you before not have been a libertarian, you suddenly realize these ideas, to just stand up and think, I was wrong.
That
It
is
takes
so
a
hard.
lot to do that.
Yeah. And even more important, and this is actually one of the big hard parts of cognitive dissonance, is that the people whom I trusted as a child lied to me.
Oh yeah, that's
Right
true.
now, a lot of people fail here because they go, okay, you can say, well, they were naive and all that type of stuff, but these were your trusted caregivers.
Oh yeah.
And you're going, oh, geez. And not even that, but if you're deontological, you're saying, and they're doing evil. They're actually supporting evil.
Mhm.
We have a saying that I started a few years ago, not your effing friends, to refer to the people in the authoritarian 49 who are,
Mhm.
hey, how's it going there? They seem like a buddy, and you go over and you have a barbecue and that type of stuff. But remember, those are the people who will come for you and stick you in the cattle cars when their masters tell you, right? Milgram experiment, we know 2/3 of people will kill you if some guy in a lab coat says it's imperative to an experiment, right?
Mhm.
And now add to that flags and oaths and and you get very quickly to understand that you are surrounded by people who are not safe to be around. They're not safe to be around. So that's a very scary a realization, and one that a lot of people, and I've watched it, where people go, oh geez, I can't go down that path. I need to shut that off. I will not think this further. So that path is a very hard path to go down. I praise anyone who does it. And it's, we're talking about the characteristics. We've actually talked about the characteristics of those who have the capability to actually convert. And as I mentioned, it's a rare intersection of a number of characteristics. But let me go on because I have more slides.
Mhm.
Depression. I went into the depression for about 10 years of my 1940, my 43 years thing. And I think that if you're in this for any length of time and you're trying these other strategies, this is a strategy that you will eventually wind up in. But there's another strategy called separation. And this is a strategy that actually seems to work pretty well. You see it, you kind of have like the lone man, grizzly man who goes into the woods and lives off the land, right? And of course the authoritarians always want to conflate libertarians with that person. but that kind of works. I mean, it's a tough life. I don't know that I want to do that. There's also the people who go, oh yeah, I'm going to stay in these states until the policies get too bad, and then I'm going to move to this country, and then kind of the digital nomad, or the person who goes from country to country, and you have to be fairly well heeled, but that's a strategy that seems to work. Freedom cells, we have that in the U.S. I don't know if you guys have that in Germany, but the idea there is that you find 6 people. It's usually around 6, but it could be 8, it could be 5. But someone's in charge of defense, someone's in charge of food, someone's in charge of communications, and they become experts in those areas. And so the idea is that you become kind of this autonomous cell of people relying on each other and working together. And you can actually kind of separate and do stuff there in a kind of an agoristic view. And so that seems to work.
This works. 6 people is enough.
Well, yeah. I mean, the original concept of this that came from John Bush in Texas, and the idea was 6. I mean, I've met cells that were as large as 10. I mean, the trouble is that you don't want it to get too large, and remember, these are usually heads of households, right? It's not 6 people, but it could be 6 families.
Okay,
where each family is an expert in an area. But yeah, I mean, and I find it fascinating, and I invite all these people to come to New Hampshire because they are definitely in our neck of the woods. But what we're doing in New Hampshire, and what I'm going to be talking about today, is mass concentration, and that's where we bring in lots and lots and lots of people from all over who are liberty oriented, and we take over a particular region. Now, one of the reasons why libertarianism, these other strategies don't work, is because libertarians generally don't understand what is necessary to create a liberty society. There's one necessary ingredient for a liberty society, and that is libertarians. You cannot take a bunch of authoritarians and just say, oh, you're now libertarian, or I'm going to impose libertarianism on you, because they're still going to be authoritarian. So what you need, the idea behind this is you need a libertarian populace. So this is almost a bottom-up approach to creating a liberty society for real. That the society has to have as the elements libertarians. And then the second idea behind this is that libertarians are rare. It's really hard to find them. It's really hard to become them. They're beleaguered, but they do deserve to live in the type of society that they want. And they shouldn't have to live forever enslaved in an authoritarian society that they detest. And they're necessary for a liberty for real society. So the kind of a general idea is, you can think of this almost like a guerrilla tactic. Let's say that you're in a foreign land and you have very few people and you have savages all around you that are coming to kill you. Well, what do? You go into a defensible fortress. You build a fortress. You build a place where you guys can commune and the cannibals can't actually get in, right? And so that's really what we're doing, trying to get out from where libertarians are isolated. Andreas, how many? You said that you have a brother who's a little bit libertarian. Is that your situation, or is your family libertarian?
Not at all. They hardly get what I'm doing.
Okay, so how about the people in your block? How many libertarians on your block?
I'm till this. I have like 8,000 followers on Twitter and 5,000 on Telegram, but not close to 5,000 on YouTube. But you always have to realize that I post memes all the time. Every day I post 10 memes, and these are most of the time libertarian anarchistic memes and stuff like that. But there's a lot of shit posts where I just make fun of the government, and I just tell it's a lot of people, I guess, they are not really libertarians. They just follow me because they find the memes funny.
Sure,
And
sure,
that's
sure.
okay. I mean, it's completely fine. But on the other hand, I there's hardly a week goes by where not someone tells me that you radicalized me, and
Good for you.
it's a great honor to me, of course, and I think I make progress, but of course everything's taking its time.
Well, how many people in your how many of your neighbors are libertarian?
Hardly any.
Hmm. I
But
mean, in your
this is
town,
kind of
is it
it is kind of the reason why I'm talking to you right now, because I'm trying actually in real life this concentration strategy.
right? Right.
Um, I'm close to moving, and I will move to an area where there are more people libertarian close in my neighborhood, and that's
Hmm.
exactly what I'm doing. This is kind of the reason why I wanted to talk to you about that strategy right now, because
Yeah,
I'm
and
doing
that's
that.
really the point that I'm trying to make is that the libertarians are, they crop up so randomly, and that it's not coalesced, right? So
Mhm.
you crop up in your neighborhood, in your family, and you're the only libertarian,
Yes.
and and another libertarian is in somewhere else in another town, but we're all isolated. We're all
Mhm.
isolated and totally surrounded, and this is like being dropped into a savage land of cannibals, and
Yep.
you're isolated, and everyone's coming out for you. So you want to find each other and build a fortress. um, in the US, we have a number of examples of doing this. The Mormons moved to Utah, which is a state, and made that basically a a Mormon state. The Amish, we have a number of Amish towns that are very successful in terms of keeping out the government and living their own lifestyle. Internationally, Israel would be an example
Yeah, well,
of uh, of a kind of a concentration strategy, right? Of bringing the Jews that were isolated, but they're isolated by village. Remember, the Jews, we have it much tougher than the Jews or the Mormons or the Amish, because they were isolated by village or by families. We don't even have that, right?
yeah,
We're single individuals.
well, just the Mormons, they are really they are Christians, and I think they are mostly hardworking people, and I'm not sure if they dislike the government that much.
Oh, I'm not saying
They
I'm not saying that these are libertarians. What I'm saying is that
yes, absolutely not.
these are groups that have utilized successfully the concentration strategy for
Yeah.
their group.
Yeah, and to the Amish, I just think that the government allows them to do whatever they want, and Israel is a hardcore state.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the US, we also have Chinatowns where, Chinese immigrants
Yes.
come and they
Yeah.
migrate into one small area. And it's usually a small, a few blocks within a state, but then that becomes Chinatown. That becomes their concentrated location. So we
Mm,
have examples in other domains, not libertarianism, but in other
mm,
domains of concentration strategy working pretty well.
sure.
I think that we are more analogous to the gay migrations, where we have gay migrations to urban areas. In San Francisco, there was a large gay migration, and they essentially took over the city, with a small additional increase in their percentage. They were able to control that. But in their small towns, they may be the only gay person, or actually, there's a lot more gays than there are libertarians. So we had a talk at Porc Fest a few years ago, a debate that it was easier to turn heterosexual to homosexuality than it is to turn an authoritarian to libertarianism. And I
Okay.
believe that. I think it's actually easier to do the first.
Well,
And you see, just the percentages. We're largely overwhelmed um, by the gay population. Where it's many times larger than we are. But they're able to concentrate and enjoy a certain amount of freedom. Why can't libertarians do the same? That's the question. Why can't we do the same? Now, we have done the same, and there are a number of libertarian concentrations. There's special economic zones. There's startup societies, free private societies. There's micronations that may not be particularly freedom. Minerva was one that was started, and the state came and the country came and wiped them off the reef. Seasteading would be examples of thoughts around creating concentrations out on the ocean. Liberstad in Norway would be an example. Liberland, which is in between Croatia and Serbia. The states keep on going in there and wiping them out. Liechtenstein, which is run by an anarcho-capitalist king. Gulch, which failed in Chile. Prospera, which is still going on in Central America and Honduras. Freedom Haven, which is the idea is to take large boats and create floating cities. But in Europe, probably Montelibro in Montenegro is the largest one. Are you in touch with the Montelibroans? Do you do anything with them?
No, but I am in touch from. Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
The Prospera, the free private cities. The head is Tito Skebel, and I've met him several times, and I'm in contact with people who work for him.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, and he's got a number of people who were part of the Free State Project actually there. But Montenegro, they basically use the Free State Project as the model. And they said, we need a Free State Project in Europe. Now, there's a number of problems that they have that, maybe that wasn't the best place, but, they're making a go of it. And they have a conference and a festival down there. I haven't actually quite made it out there. I'm hoping they come to New Hampshire Liberty Forum this year and share, their progress and the obstacles. We're trying to get all the emerging Liberty for Real state societies to come and present at New Hampshire Liberty Forum next year in April. But another one that's modeled on the Free State Project is the Free Province Project in Canada. For some reason, we can't get these Canadians down here, so they're trying to create a province, a free province in New Hampshire, picking New Brunswick, which is tantalizingly close to New Hampshire. But the Free State Project is really the most advanced and the most successful. The idea here is what you want to do is you want to increase the population by about 2% libertarian activists. So whatever the base level is, you want to increase that by about another 2% of libertarian activists. The population increases by 2% activists. And the concept is that most people are not hardcore libertarian or hardcore authoritarian. Most people are flotsam. And what that means is that, if the general direction of the current is authoritarian, everybody's going to be moving in the authoritarian. The flotsam will move in the authoritarian manner. If the general direction is libertarian, they're going to move in the libertarian. So that large body of flotsam in the middle will just go with whatever the current ethos is. So if you get enough libertarians, you need a high enough concentration. You don't need 51%. But if you get into that 2.5%, 3%, we're actually aiming for kind of a 2.5% level here. You can actually get a significant movement of the flotsam in that liberty direction, and that's really all you need. We've had just gigantic success in the Free State Project. We're number one in guns. We actually nullify federal laws on guns. We don't have gun laws even against machine guns. And when the when the feds come in to try to impose their gun laws, our state people refuse to work with them. So they have to bring enough people to actually go ahead and enforce their laws in New Hampshire. So we are nullifying them specifically. We do a lot of agorism here. We do a lot of homesteading. We have a fantastic homeschooling, and we trade off being the number one place for homeschooling. But right now, families can get up to $4,500 per year of their tax dollars back, and educate their child however they want. They can send them to a school, a private school, or they can do homeschooling. So supporting parents to educate their own children is really high here, and we lead the nation there. We're number one in crypto in the United States, and we're number one in metals. We're number two in gold backs, which is this pressed gold in plastic that people use. I don't have my wallet, but I always keep a couple gold backs in there. And we're building parallel institutions. We've had a lot of success, but those are all kind of like areas of things that we're advancing kind of in parallel institutions. In politics, we're rolling back laws. We actually have about 1/4 of the House of Representatives are our people, and so we are probably the largest block, coherent block there. And so the other political players have to kind of play around with us. They have to respect us, right? Because we've got power. We've got power of concentration, whereas libertarians in other areas have no power whatsoever. We actually have power of concentration, because the people who come here tend to be somewhat political. In this last primary, it was so funny because in my Liberty Community Center, we have a number of Liberty Community Centers. That's what this map is on the right hand side that you see. The map, those are different Liberty Community Centers. That's the 30-minute drive window for the different Liberty Community Centers. And you can see kind of where they are, and how you could live here and you might be able to go to 2 different Liberty Community Centers. But in my community centers, there were a lot of people who came here with no intention to run, and now a lot of them actually just won their primaries, and will be going into the general election. Some of them unopposed. So we're taking advantage of that. Most people aren't all that interested in the political process. We come here and we want to remove the political process from our lives, and we're very highly motivated to do so. So when we get people here, they're highly motivated, and they're willing to build community, and they're willing to go and work on politics. I'm sorry, you had a question.
After the Porc Fest, I think I don't know, a few days afterwards, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I saw a tweet of Jeremy Kaufman who said at the Porc Fest, and I don't know, maybe even all over New Hampshire, there were far more people paying in silver coins than with Bitcoin. I just want to, because Germany has a huge community for Bitcoin, and I absolutely love these guys. I hardly know people who are like referring to precious metals, but the Germans really love Bitcoins. And I just wanted to ask you about your experience that Bitcoin is, because you just mentioned that crypto is really strong in New Hampshire. But I just want to ask, is it doesn't seem to be such a huge thing. It's so people in New Hampshire seem to be more like into silver medals and gold backs than into paying with like Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's been the transition. I mean, I was here in 2011 when Bitcoin was first being sold, and I think I was offered it like at $8 or something like that, or it was something ridiculous at Porc Fest. And definitely for a while there, it was pretty heavily used. I mean, the transaction costs are really kind of what has decreased the use of it. And I think what Jeremy's saying is that there's a lot of people who are using silver for transactions, because it's You can hold it. You can, it's real, and you don't have to get businesses to do it. But we have a lot of businesses that take various crypto. I think Monero's pretty popular here. We have one guy who lives on Dash full time. Now I'm not a big crypto person. I have some metals and that type of thing. But
Yeah.
there's so many areas here that different people come here and they kind of like specialize in various areas. So there are people here who are really, really big in crypto, and you ought to talk to someone there about what our transition, because we were early in crypto. We went through kind of a peak in crypto, and now we're looking at other things that might be easier and not less transaction cost and that type of thing, especially the cost of getting other businesses online. We had some entrepreneurs here who created some apps that made it much easier, but then they left, and now we don't have those people who are evangelizing that as much. But we have the longest running crypto meetup in the world. Um, we have multiple meetups each week in crypto meetups, and so they'll meet at a restaurant that accepts crypto, and everyone uses crypto, and they talk crypto and all that type of stuff. So crypto's pretty big here. But I
Yeah.
think what Jeremy was talking about was that just in terms of number of transactions, silver might be something that a lot more of vendors are happier taking than they are worrying with the electronic and hassles of that.
Yeah, it's just I'm just trying to mention that because of my audience, because it's not, of course I'm completely fine with whatever the people in New Hampshire think they use for transaction. That's their thing. It's just that the German community is completely unforgivable about Bitcoin only. You can't come to them and tell them stuff about Dash and Monero and stuff like that. They will completely be rolling their eyes and being annoyed and tell you to just go away. I don't want to talk to you. It's
Are
it's
you using
Bitcoin and it's
are
nothing
you
else.
using Bitcoin for like a restaurant or small purchases and stuff?
We do, and we are progressing from month to month. There are meetups all over Germany, in especially, of course, in bigger towns. But they are propping up like from month to month, more and more, and they are trying to convince the people where they have their meetups to accept Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And we are not talking about transaction costs, because we are doing that all by Lightning, and even if it's just a wallet of Satoshi or some stuff like that, there are not really transaction costs. Of course, there are technical difficulties by like KYC stuff and all of this, but it's not like people are thinking this through. There are, especially in Berlin, there are all these types of people who are into the technical difficulties, and they are already talking about third layer solutions after Lightning, and which then also have the opportunity to being anonymous and stuff like that. So the Bitcoin community in Germany is really huge, and they are progressing like from month to month, and it's incredible to see that. And because of that, I'm just that interested into New Hampshire doesn't seem to do that, and I'm just curious why this is the case. But if you are not an
Yeah, I mean,
expert in
I
this
think there
stuff,
was like I said, there was a peak.
yes,
It's
sure, but that
we
was
have we
years
have some
ago.
alternatives that are coming in. I mean, we're still number one in crypto, so we're still using it. We're just
Mm,
not as new and rabid as the Berliners maybe. Um, and and we have competing things here. That's it's still kind of a marketplace for it. And there's still debate, and people will use different things. So
mm,
like I said,
sure.
I'm not big into it myself, so I'm probably the wrong person to talk to. There are people here who like I said, they live only on crypto. So
Yeah.
you know um
just
But anyway,
my audience would have asked this question, so I had to put it out.
yeah, well, maybe I'm the wrong person to answer.
No, it's completely
Like,
fine. I just wanted
yeah.
to make sure that it was right, and you said, yeah, that's the way. What do you use most of the time? Do you use like
Oh,
dollars or
I
gold backs or
I
silver
use
coins?
no, I use dirty fiat most of the time. I use
Most of
dirty
yeah.
fiat most of the time. I use gold backs. I don't use silver. I don't use crypto.
Okay.
Um, but I'm old.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this will change with much bigger inflation stuff like that. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I did want to talk a little bit about how we have all these micro freedoms. I think I talked about the beer example before. We're doing medical aid in dying and stuff like that. The beer thing was we slipped in a bill late at night when most people didn't think that would matter at all to have these like kind of micro brews, and it totally transformed the restaurant industry in New Hampshire over just a few years, where we have all these breweries and little breweries cropping up and stuff like that. And so, what's interesting is, the government tamps everything down, all innovation down, 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 down. And then you start releasing them. And all of a sudden you get this explosion of innovation.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges, the problems that we've had. And I'll even go into some of the reasons why people have given up on the project. Just as a quick check, is this something that I should go into, or is this something that would be of interest?
That people went out of the Free State project?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
interesting.
Okay,
Especially if
okay.
you know what the reasons were.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean, I go through this. So the first thing, of course, is New Hampshire. Everyone likes to, even though we're 20 years, people go, well, why don't you do it in, and then they'll put in a state, and and then
Yeah.
you go, well, the reasons why that wasn't chosen 21 years ago was, but
Mm.
the issue is that's moot. We made our decision,
Of
and
course,
if
yeah.
for you guys, if you guys choose a town to consolidate in, at some point you go, yeah, you can make cases and a lot of type of stuff. We're not revisiting that because we're busy building, right? We're building extraordinarily hard in a number of large areas in New Hampshire, and to pick up and start off from scratch is just insane. We've had
Yes.
21 years of building infrastructure.
Mm.
People go, well, hey, I want a warm beach. It's too cold up in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a lot warmer than Germany, so I don't know what they're talking about. But then a big area was a big problem that we did was that we underestimated how much time it would take to do the diffusion to New Hampshire. And the big thing was how long it would take to get signatures, right? So, Jason kind of like said, "Oh yeah, we'll get 20,000 people to sign, and that's not that many, and we have 15% of the U.S. population is libertarian, and we get so it was kind of almost tossed aside as an unimportant issue. It took us 15 years to get enough people to get the 20,000 signatures.
Mm.
So it was just a gigantic hurdle that we hadn't expected. Another one is just predicting how long it takes people to move. Um, you know, I think New Hampshire is fantastic, and I think it's horrible living in the authoritarian 49. And most people, when they move here, they go, "I should have moved here sooner. I'm so glad. I feel so relieved to be here amongst other people of my kind." Um, but it's hard for people to imagine. It's hard for people. So even when they sign, we estimated it would take about 5 years for people to move. And we're now 7 years, and a lot of those people still haven't moved. And it's just like, oh, I got a kid and he's in school. He likes his school, and on and on and on. So how long it takes to move was a big underestimate. Um, and then just the physical logistics of getting people to move. We have something called a welcome wagon, where you come here with your U-Haul truck filled, and we'll empty it out in like a half hour. We just get all these porcupines to show up to your house, and we're just like helping you move in and stuff. So we do things like that. But still, there's just a bunch of logistics to moving. That turns out to be pretty hard. We have remember the New Hampshire, even though it was one of the more free states, still has an authoritarian base, right? It's not a libertarian state. It's not a libertarian state until we turn it into a libertarian state. So the question is, okay, what about the authoritarian natives? Um, and certainly the most intense authoritarians, they're kind of a problem. We have socialists and people. We actually have people here who came and moved here with the opposite intention. They were paid union operatives to turn New Hampshire into a state more like Massachusetts or like New York State. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so, we actually offer to help people move out of state, these authoritarians. It's something called state swap. And we'll help them select the state that they most want to go to. We'll help them find a place to go there. We'll help them sell their property. We'll help them pack up and move. We'll pay for the moving, and we'll pay for their travel, and we'll pay their first month's rent or mortgage. So that's an offer that we offer people there. Now, we haven't had any people. We've had a couple of people who have started to say, yeah, I'm kind of interested. But then we tell them that the catch is that we have to actually videotape them leaving to use for propaganda purposes, and they can't come back for another 10 years. And that's usually where they balk. They go, I don't know. And then they disappear. Housing prices. New Hampshire has turned down into one of the hot housing states. A lot of that is, we do have a lot of people moving in here. And so you see few houses come on, and then it's libertarians kind of taking them. So housing prices have gone up. A lot of that also, though, is because of zoning laws, the government zoning laws, the authoritarian zoning laws. And we don't have the power yet to actually be affecting those zoning laws. So we want a higher concentration to affect the zoning laws. Let's see now. Housing. Yeah.
It's just completely awesome to me that you just tell me like there are socialists or authoritarians, and that what you just tell me is a physical removal the nice way.
Oh yeah.
We just offer you to go away. It's completely awesome.
Well, I mean, this is our big complaint. People say, "Oh, you're just like Israel, and look at what happened there." I go, "Well, if they had just bought the people out, what would have happened then?" Right?
I think they already did that in the early stages, like the 1948 or stuff like that.
I mean, I don't want to get into that debate.
Yeah, sure.
No, the answer is no, they didn't.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's a bad topic,
and we're not doing that. That's not
Hmm?
what we want to do. We're libertarians. Then they were, very much status and thinking, they were rightly justified in using violence and aggression against the native population, and we're not. That's not our policy. We're looking for a win-win. We're looking to buy up their property and move in libertarians, and we're looking to help the worst ones out of state. Because look, they're going to be miserable. They're already miserable. On the screen here on the right hand side, you can see that here is one of the sheets that they send out. They send out postcards about us, and they hold demonstrations in the street about us, and they put up these pamphlets. It's like, oh my God, do you know what these free staters are? And look, be careful about them. And some of the things are incredibly, kind of almost a call to arms. These people are destroying our way of life. Now, their way of life. Remember, these are authoritarians who are putting this out. Their way of life is enslaving other people. And we're trying to say, no, you should be able to be free to voluntarily choose. And of course, they think that that's destroying it. But if you look at the details of this particular flyer, it's just so great. I mean, we actually use their stuff for our propaganda. We go, this is what, where else in the world are libertarians protested against? Libertarians are so feckless. They have no power. They have no one. No one cares about them. And yet here, you get organizations. We have organizations that are dedicated to keeping track of us. And they put out a year ago, they put out a list of extremists. I was actually on it, but so many libertarians were so upset here because they weren't on the list. Their list only listed like 500, and we have thousands of people. And the woman who actually did it, she came to Liberty Forum last year, and she was like looking sheepishly, and she was just totally surrounded with people going, "I want to be on the list. How do I get on the list?" And we wore buttons. I'm on the list. Put me on the list.
I'm offended you don't consider me to be a domestic terrorist. Yeah, sure.
Well, especially the way that they define right?
Yes,
A
sure,
domestic terrorist, according to an authoritarian, is someone who says you may not use aggression against other human beings. They consider that aggression. Well, you're telling me what to do. I go, no, just say don't hurt anyone. And oh man, it's just like, and it usually ends up with an invitation to help pay for their exit. But so the Republicans have been very excited about us. They see us as a necessary reinforcement, because the Democrats, the takeover was really from other states that are very authoritarian. And they were sending in people to kind of come in and turn this into yet another Democratic state. And then all of a sudden, the Republicans, it was actually a Republican mayor who when we were choosing, he was the only, Republican governor. He was the only governor to say, we welcome the Free State Project. And that was a big selling point. We go, okay, they want us there too. So, I mean, and they're going, oh my goodness, because if you think about it, they have to deal, especially with the Republican rank and file, they have to deal with what we call rhinos, which are Republicans in name only. So they talk about wanting small government and wanting to stay out of your business and all this type of stuff, but they don't. They're not. That's not what they do. They're always in your business. They're always increasing government. They're basically like socialist light, right? Or the Democrats are socialist light, and then the Republicans are like Democratic lights. And then now in come a whole bunch of people who are damn clear we are not putting up with slavery. Damn clear we want government to be reduced. Damn clear we do not want government telling us how to live our lives, interfering with our families, interfering with our children, interfering with our businesses. And all of a sudden they go, oh my goodness, thank God these guys are moving. Another big thing, though, is that this is the first in the nation where voting goes. And so there's a big influx of crony money that comes in here, and that supports especially the Democrats who do a lot of fighting here. So it's funny because a lot of people look to New Hampshire because we are the first state to do voting in the primaries, and a win in the primary in New Hampshire says a lot for the candidates. But the downside is that we get all this crony money coming in here and inflating the authoritarians who are here. And so you'll see kind of like these really weird things that are happening in New Hampshire. You go, wait, I thought that was the free state. And just contact me. I'll explain to you what's actually going on there. So let's see now. Yeah, so we have union dollars. We have paid union operatives who basically came here to kind of organize unions and stuff, and then they realized, oh my God, there's all these free staters, and we have to organize against them. We also have become a target for the feds, especially in crypto. I don't know if you know that we've had a number of people arrested for use of crypto and selling crypto and things like that. So we are, you talk about what's happening in Berlin, but remember, we're years ahead of you. So we're the point of the spear, and the federal government has come for us and destroyed businesses and destroyed. We have people in jail for simply selling crypto. And then the crypto is used by the person who bought it for something else. And it's like, then you're in some sort of conspiracy, which of course they weren't. They were just selling crypto. but that's how they get you, right? That's how they got Russ Ulbricht, and that's kind of one of the strategies that they're doing. Another big challenge that we've had is that the people who come in early in the diffusion are quite different from the people who come in the middle and come in from the later stages.
This fat stuff is like I just saw again Jeremy Kaufman just yesterday or the day before yesterday. I saw him in a video. I don't know if you saw it. There were like two federal agents with a car, and they refused to give him the full name, and he just in full confidence he just told them to fuck off. It was completely awesome to anyone in Germany.
Hey, how can I help you?
Hey there, hey Jeremy.
Yeah.
How are you?
Who are you?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Can you give your full name, please?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Is that sufficient to identify as only one O'Donnell affiliated with the FBI?
In New Hampshire, yes.
Could you please state your full name, sir?
Could you please stop recording?
No. It's First Amendment right.
Okay.
What's your name, sir?
Could you stop recording, please?
Absolutely not. You can show me your name and identification, or I'm going to go back inside my house.
Okay.
I don't really want to broadcast my.
Oh, this is going out right after you guys
I
walk
know,
away.
So that's why I'm not going to.
So you can show me your name and ID, you can walk away.
We just want to talk about something.
I'm not going to talk to people who claim to be federal agents unless they can show me identification.
Okay, well, you see our badges.
I need to see... Is your full name on that badge?
No.
I'd like to see something with your full name, or I'm not going to talk to you.
I prefer you not to broadcast it.
This will be going online as soon as you walk away.
Well, all I want to do is talk to you about a post that was made, and if you
Well,
happen to be the one that made the post.
I want to talk to you about you guys coming here. Say you make a salary of, I don't know what, low 100K? You guys making six figures? Factor in 50% expenses, overhead, maybe 100% expenses. Talking about burning a couple $100 an hour just here, let alone all the time you guys are spending to investigate something that you know is not against the law, right? Like
So
you're
not
familiar
saying
with...
it is, we
So then why would you come?
Because we wanted to make sure that there weren't any other
No, you're
threats.
coming because you're part of a regime that does this kind of thing when you know laws aren't being broken. And that's an embarrassment, man. Didn't you guys read the Constitution? Do you not believe in America? Like, how do you do your
Thank you
jobs
for
and
your
go
time.
home?
We appreciate it.
You're walking away. Because nothing we did is against the law, and you guys are fuckheads that try to act like bullies. And I hope you go home and are embarrassed. You can't even say your name on camera because you know that what you're doing is embarrassing. You know Americans that believe in the Constitution think you're laughable. And you go home and you think about what you did today. Go home and think about it, you cowards. Drive away. Drive away.
Thank you for your time.
You're not welcome. You should be embarrassed. Embarrassing. You guys are embarrassing.
Yes. Well, that's let's just say that we attract the toughest of the tough libertarians, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a self-reinforcing community, right? So if you really love liberty, I really don't think that there's any place better than you could live than in New Hampshire. Because you're going, you may be the toughest in your town or in your state, but I can assure you, when you move here, you won't be.
Yeah.
And we actually, it's funny because a lot of people go, well, why aren't the celebritarians coming to New Hampshire? What is going on? The celebritarians who go and talk all the time about how terrible DC is and how bad government is. We actually have the most successful libertarian program going on, and a number of celebritarians intentionally ignore us. And you're going, well, why would you ignore the most successful emerging liberty for real society if you really cared about it? And part of the answer is that the money is in the bitching. It's not in the solution. The solution, which is downsize, create a fortress. That if your current money project is, look how terrible this is, let's all complain about it. Oh my God, here's the latest outrage. We keep on saying those outrages are all a distraction. They are distracting you from building for real. My theme this year has been build, don't bitch. So stop bitching about stuff you cannot control. You cannot control DC. We do not have the numbers to do it. So stop bitching about it and actually go to a place where you can build for real. And that's New Hampshire.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, because there are so many smart asses out there who just tell you all the time, no, this has to be 100% of the way how I think it should go. And they just complaining all the time and don't. I'm not talking about voting or authoritarian stuff, but in the prospect of freedom, they're just telling you, no, this has to be 100% the way I think it must go. Otherwise, I'm completely ignoring everything. But in these terms, you just have to make compromises.
Yeah. So I talk about there's kind of a continuum, right? So here we are in an authoritarian world where most people live, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like libertarianism in your head, the science fiction libertarian. So we have a lot of libertarians talking about, oh, this is really terrible. Oh my God, or they're going, hey, we're going to be doing this failed strategy, and then it fails again, and you go, oh man, well, we just need to work twice as hard. And then there's people talking only about libertarianism in their head. And I'm heading New Hampshire Liberty Forum, and what we're doing is we're actually pivoting New Hampshire Liberty Forum to be focused on not the people here in authoritarian world, and not the people here in fantasy in your head, but in this emerging liberty for real societies. So people who have actually starting to build these liberty for real societies, what are the actual obstacles that they're facing? And what are possible solutions? So it's kind of a hacker space. I don't know if you have those in Berlin, but basically it's going to be like a brainstorming
I'm
session.
hardly in Berlin. I just talk to people who are from everywhere from Germany. I haven't been to Berlin in like 10 years or something. I don't know.
It's my ignorance. You have to come on. Just think of me as an ignorant American.
I'm just saying. So I mean, it's probably an awesome town. I mean, it's kind of like a socialist shithole. Like, I just talk to people from Berlin, because there are, of course, libertarians in Berlin. It's just a huge town, huge city.
But what we notice is that there's nobody talking about these emerging liberty for real societies. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start talking about that. The New Hampshire Liberty Forum in April is going to be focused on that. We're going to bring in different emerging liberty for real societies. We're going to talk about the real problems that real emerging liberty for societies are having. We're going to be doing brainstorming, and it should be really exciting to people who are thinkers, problem solvers. They really want to actually build. And I have to tell you, is this exciting to the people who are basically doing the complaining about DC? No, because we're actually talking about solutions, right? We're talking about solutions and moving ahead. Is this pie in the sky? No, it's not. It's not this either. It is, here we are on emerging liberty for real societies. How do we get to here? That's what we're concerned with in New Hampshire. This distance. Let's do that. In terms of the early movers, they tend to be much more introverted, much more autistic, really much higher nerds. The later movers tend to be less so. But of course, we are characterized by the early movers. It's like, oh my goodness, look at all these nerds. And
yeah, I love these people.
Now, we've had probably about 12,000 people move to New Hampshire over 20 years. So I said 6,000 people before. I think I mentioned that, but that's what we have left. So this is a concept called churn. A number of people will take an innovation, but not all of them will stay in it. So over 20 years, we've had about 50% churn, which people go, oh my God, that's a lot. It's actually not. But we have people, the older farts like myself, we die out. We're not. Even though we're libertarian, doesn't mean that we live forever. A big thing though is the burnout, and a lot of that has to do with how badly we got the math, right? Because remember, we got the math wrong. We thought that this would be like a 6 to 10 year diffusion, and we are now in year 20 or 21. And from my estimate, I'll show you why. I estimate this to be a 50-year diffusion curve. So when people first got here, remember the first person gets here, first libertarian, he goes, I'm in New Hampshire. This is the libertarian homeland. Oh my God. This is well, guess what? You're just in another authoritarian state. And you've added 1 + 1. It is not a libertarian state yet. We have to get 20,000 people to move here before you get there. And so, people were kind of going, their expectations were set unrealistically early on. And so they burned out. But we do have other reasons why people leave. One of them is lack of fit. That we do get people who kind of go, hey, I'm coming here and I want everything to be done. You can kind of see this online where people say, I'm not moving until you legalize X or until you do. And it's like, you don't understand. We're building here. You are moving here to help us build. So people who aren't builders and they come here and they just want to kind of benefit from freedom. It's like, well, what the heck are you doing here? So a number of those people kind of drop out. We have had, it's really interesting because one of the things that happens is we have such a diversity of liberty people. We touched on that a little bit, whether they're deontological or whether they're consequential. But we also have, conservatives and libertines and stoics and, religious, and we have Randians, and we have Hoppians, and we have Rothbardians, and we have Friedmans, and we have all these different groups, and it's so different in New Hampshire. I can't tell you how different it is, because when in the authoritarian 49, which is the other states in the United States, right? We have 50 states, 49 of them are, I call them the authoritarian 49. In the authoritarian 49, it's so rare to bump up against a libertarian. You see a libertarian, you go, oh, my brother, libertarian, oh, and you totally ignore the differences, right?
Yeah.
But here, we have so many, and they form groups, and now all of a sudden, oh, well, you're not one of those libertarians. Oh. So we welcome. What I keep on saying is we need these different groups, because we can't possibly populate New Hampshire with libertarians unless we have a lot of these different groups. But the trouble is kind of that first thing where the first person comes who's in a different group will go, oh, there's no groups around me. Hey, that's why you're here. We want you to build that group, and we want you to attract more people like you here. I keep on telling people, bring more people like you. And there are, I'm kind of an entrepreneur. I'm a builder by nature. So there are people for whom that's just a natural impulse, and there's people who just, they don't know how to do it and they don't want to do it. But so the groups, big area though is spouses. And this is actually a big problem that we had early on with churn. So usually you have in a family, in a husband and wife, one of them, usually the husband, although I have met wives, usually the husband is really libertarian and really wants to do this, and the wife is going, I don't know. Early on, it was terrible for the spouses because we didn't have all these different groups that we now have. Now there are parenting groups and women in the Free State groups and children's get-together groups and social groups. We have something called what is it? Stitch and Bitch. So women get together. Actually, I think they have one guy who joins them, but they get together and they kind of they do artwork or stitching or yarn work, and then they bitch about things and complain about things. But it's kind of a social thing. So it's actually a lot of these problems are ameliorating as we get more and more people. Yeah. But these were problems that were early on because our diffusion was so slow into the state. Oh yeah, another thing is, we are pretty heavy male oriented. So,
Yep.
you get a lot of males coming in here and they're going, okay, where are the libertarian females? Well, libertarian females are hard to come by. And
Mhm.
I have reasons why that is. Turns out though that, if I were to rank, I don't know anything about the person, but if you were to say, okay, you have a male, you have a female, you have a U.S. citizen, and you have a foreign-born citizen, I will go with the foreign-born female who's a libertarian over all of them, just because they tend to be the most intense, because they have had to cross the bigger hurdles to actually get here to New Hampshire. So they are the most determined. They're the people who are the most rabid. But it's hard for our single guys to come here, and so a number of the papers that are being suggested for New Hampshire Liberty Forum have to do with dating and prostitution and things like that. All these solutions that people are coming up with. It's very funny to watch. People come in with various thicknesses, and do you understand the difference between a thin libertarian and a thick libertarian, Andreas?
I've
that
already
language?
read that, but yes, it's Hop is talking about that.
Right.
But just before I say something wrong, just tell me again. Or Lou Rockwell was it? I don't know. But I've heard about it.
Yeah. So this is, look, we want to commune with libertarian plus what? Right. And, of course, conservatives want to do it with plus conservative, and libertines want to do it plus libertine, and, families want to do it plus family. And so this is kind of the groups. People come in, and libertarianism isn't really a unifying theme. I consider libertarianism to be the minimum standard for an ethical human, below which, if you actually start aggressing towards other people and start using violence to enslave them for your profit or preferences, you're evil. You're in the evil category. But once you're at the libertarian level, okay, you're not being evil, but there's like better ways of living, and different people
But
will
that's
have
like
different.
just the baseline, right?
Yeah, well, it's the minimum. It's that.
Yep.
It's the baseline. It's the foundation, right? So now most of the population is well below that minimum.
Yes.
And here it's such a relief. You go, oh God, there's so many people that actually could be my friends, right? Whereas in the authoritarian 49, they weren't really my friends, because somebody who will turn you into the police, somebody who will vote for your incarceration or murder for how
Yeah.
you choose to use your own body,
Yes.
cannot really be your friend. They don't, they can be an acquaintance, you can be friendly with them, but have your hand on the trigger,
Yep.
and this is a person who might be coming for you and load you in those cattle cars. We do have from time to time various wars fighting out. We have pragmatists. The pragmatists are the people who are running for office and doing a great job of doing that. But then we also have the really principled people. You see the most rabid in LPNH and other groups like that. But we have hundreds of different groups. And from time to time, people will say, oh, you're messing me up, or you're doing it wrong. And so we get into like these little battles, and people get frustrated. And I keep on saying, yeah, just put them on mute. But people being emotional things, even though our folks try to be more rational than emotional, people kind of go, they give up. Jobs, we need a lot more entrepreneurs who are starting up businesses. People come here. If you're in the trades, you're golden, because we have such a shortage of tradesmen here. But the people who are, I'm in this very rare archaeology intellectual area that only one college in the world will actually accept. That's hard. We've had trouble with our really highly intellectual people, because we don't really have the those types of things. Now, one of my areas is, especially with this New Hampshire Liberty Forum, where we're starting to think about, papers, intellectual development for thinking about these emerging liberty for real societies is to develop kind of a think tank that actually supports that. And then we can actually bring in more people like that. But, for the time being, jobs are an issue. And that's one of the reasons why people left. There are people who leave the country. There's family things. We get a lot of people who are basically travelers. They come in and they come in with their RV and they're really excited about being here, but they want to be on the road. And the next week you find out, we're down in Mexico. It's like, oh, I thought you were helping us build this. There are people who really value other cultural communities, and so they come here, and they may not have as many. This is a pretty white area. We had a fairly famous Muslim here for a while, but it's not a large Muslim population, and the population isn't all that libertarian. So anyway, so we see some churn there. We do get hostility from within and without, those internecine wars, and then I already talked about the authoritarians outside, and people who are more agreeable, they kind of get tired of that. And I say, yeah, this is an early thing. This is just kind of where we're in this stew of building this new thing, and so it's tumultuous, it's chaotic. But there are people who just don't have the personalities to deal with that. Other family, a lot of times, family will get sick or that type of thing. What else? Oh, big fish. Yeah. A lot of people can't take the hit in the ego. So, they're like the big libertarian in their area. And then they come here and they're like, oh, geez, I'm totally overshadowed. And I say, just play bigger. And they go, I'm going to go to a smaller pond. And then the people who have grifts that are larger, we have a number of people who understand what we're doing and they think it's really good, but they want to play national and they want to play international on that stage, even though they can't actually affect it. They want to comment on it and be part of it and stuff. And this is a local strategy. And so they go, I make my money, I make my reputation by being out here and talking about this other outside stuff. Now, I think that we can actually do that with a think tank, but right now that is an issue. Leadership, we need more leaders. We have a lot of people come in and they're like kind of sitting on their hands and go, well, what do you want me to do? What does the Free State Project want me to do? The Free State Project is 6 people and 2 employees. I don't do anything that they want me to do. I just do my own stuff. Every once in a while, our interests coincide. And I volunteer a lot for all these other groups, but it's all kind of, the entrepreneur does really well here. The self-starter entrepreneur, the person who really needs everything spelled out for them. Well, there's so many projects, they can definitely add to those ones. But, I was talking to someone the other day and they're just so laid back and that, and they're kind of complaining, they're kind of bitching. And I go, you need to build, but they're just not that type of builder. So that's another type of person that we've had a little bit of difficulty with.
Just that I'm not confusing that because is the lack of leadership and the big fish who is leaving New Hampshire because he thinks like he's like you said somewhere else, he was the big fish and now he's just he's leaving because he's searching for a smaller pond because then he's a bigger fish again. Isn't this contradicting itself?
Excellent point. So I'll give you an example. When I was in the Authoritarian 49, my big issue was licensing. I thought that was one of the horrid things that we did to the underclass, that we forced them to go to the government and the government made them jump over unnecessary, expensive hurdles that took them a lot of time when in fact they didn't want to do what the government wanted to do. They just wanted to curl hair or do this or that, right? They just wanted to practice a trade and learn the trade. And the best thing for them would have actually been just in an apprenticeship and just, and work like that. So that was my issue when I came here. I came here, and there's all these people, and there's like 2 organizations that are working on licensing. and they've got all these bills in there, and they've got this history, and I'm looking like there's no room for me. I mean, I can kind of like maybe add in, but I'm kind of a big fish, and they're doing fine without me. They don't need me, and as a matter of fact, I could, me going in there, they get upset. So I actually found another area, which is medical aid and dying, that no one was working. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I made that my own. I started working on that. I'm now considered the big liberty person on medical aid and dying. We got a bill through the House Judiciary. We got it through the House. It's a big issue. It was in all the papers. It blew up. It was, and this is a very libertarian issue, right? On a libertarian principle, who owns you? Who owns your body? Even when you're dying, is it the government? Is it the medical establishment, or is it you? Do you get to make the decisions, including ending your life, or do you have to get permission for your master? So for us, it's a really clear issue. But I'm actually connecting with Democrats. A lot of people won't connect with Democrats, but I'm okay with connecting with Democrats. And initially they were like, they didn't want me in there and stuff like that. Now they actually are like, oh, Dennis, they're very excited with me there, and I'm a big leader, because they didn't understand libertarian ethics and how critically important this was to them. And they're going, yeah. And they started adopting our language, right? To them, it was more like, yes, our masters should be kinder to us, right? That's how they started. And by the end, it was like, our rights, really. I radicalized them on a libertarian thing, at least on that one issue. They are not. This is the problem that we make, is they are not libertarian.
Yes, sure.
But this one issue, they understand the libertarian principle. They're utilizing it. They're using it as a thing. And I was able to kind of, pivot from an area that I knew really well, that I worked really long. I would be just a small fish. I'm a big fish in this one small area. It was an area that the Free Staters weren't working in at all. And now I've blown it up into like this gigantic area. If you look at our libertarian for governor, he has 4 principal platform issues, and medical aid and dying is one of those 4. So it's just been this thing that's been very big. It actually was we have an agency here that rates all of the liberty, all of the representatives and senators on how liberty they are. The big dividing line this year was their support or lack of support for medical aid and dying. So going from nothing to this big area that nobody expected to explode, I was able to do. I'm that type of entrepreneur, though. I go, okay, I'm not going to be able to help this, but I can do this, right? A lot of people aren't like that. Even though that they're a leader, they may do licensing. They go, I can't do licensing here, or I get in the way, or and so that's their area of research. That's what they know the most about. That's all their papers on it, and so what are you doing here, right? Now I would suggest to them that they have skills and they can pivot. You need a certain amount of flexibility. So anyway, that would be an example of what I'm talking about. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get it. The point is that that you have to be an expert in a specific niche, I think.
Yeah, we're going niche. The niches are getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yes,
because we have so many people working in these areas. And so, you're the big whoopie-doo on homeschooling. Well, guess what? Get in line here.
Yes, yeah, sure.
You're the big whoopie-doo on crypto and in Berlin, which I know you spend all your time at now.
But sure, but that's like the job market, right?
Yes, exactly. So here's the diffusion curve. This is actually my area of research. This is what I researched at MIT, and I did this out in the real world in a research lab, and I worked with a number of startups. But this S curve that you see here on the right, if you see, it starts off slow and there's a period of inflection, and we all know that's the second derivative right there, and then it accelerates and then asymptotes. Okay, so
Mhm.
where are we? And this curve. It's a curve of innovation. Early on, very few people adopt that innovation, right? And those people who adopt it are very different from the people in the middle and very different from the people at the end. We call the end people the laggards, the late majority, kind of after the inflection point, the early majority, early adopters, and the innovators. So where are we? Where is the Free State Project on this curve? Well, if you look at, we want to increase to 2%. We want to increase the liberty population here by 2% of the general population. So that's our goal. That was our original goal. We are now around, so we're at 6,000. So say that we're, 1/4 of the way to 2%. So if you take a line at 0.5%, and you see where we are, and that's where we are. We're on the curve. That's where we are. And now you say, okay, so what does that mean? If it took us 20 years to get there, where are we? And the answer is the asymptote is really around year 50. So that means that we'll be at an inflection point somewhere around 2029. We'll be really kind of through our rapid growth stage around 2037. That's a long process. That's something that we don't really want other people to have to go through. We wouldn't have gone through that had we known. Remember, we were told that the population of libertarians is really large here, and everybody really wants to do it, and it just wasn't true. Does this diffusion curve make sense to you? And
Yes, but
kind of
I just maybe a few questions. The first thing is in at the 2% rate, it states original 2003 goal projected to have significant liberty impact on New Hampshire. But when was the what was the original thought when you would achieve these 2%?
Yeah, well, that was what I was talking about. Remember, they thought that the signing up 20,000 people, that'd be easy. That's just going to take a couple years, and then they set as a thing from when we get 20,000 to moving, that would be 5 years. So what they were thinking was like a 7-year, 10-year type of diffusion rate, right? And as a matter of fact, what happened was, they don't know that, right? We actually have empirical data now. We actually know now what we didn't know then. So, so we have a whole bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks. Oh, well, I thought you said it would take this long. Yeah. It's like, we were wrong. So what? Knowing the future is hard to do.
Of
But
course,
now that we actually have
you
data,
have to adjust. Yes.
now that we actually have data, we can actually say, okay, this is kind of what we're seeing. Right now, I'm not 100% sure that this is where we are, but this is my best guess. And you can see that what I tell people, we have the funny thing that happens, Andreas, is we'll have people who get here to New Hampshire, and this is their attitude. Their attitude is, I'm here. Okay, we're complete with diffusion. Okay, we now have a Liberty Society. Oh my God, why do we having to do this? And why do we have?
Of course.
No, we're
course.
we're early. We're
Yeah.
really early. If you look, we're kind of in that early adopter, early majority thing. If I'm correct, we're really early in this. And the innovators, the people who came in very, very early, we lost almost all of those people because they just got burned out because they thought it was going to be much faster, right? They thought they were on a much faster diffusion curve. And so one of the things I want to do with the Freetown Project, my gift to the people who want to replicate concentration strategy, is to right size your target, because New Hampshire was too big. Given what we actually learned about the empirical truths of how many libertarians there are, how many of them would actually move, and how fast they would move, right? We didn't know those questions before. Now we actually have some information about it. We would not have picked New Hampshire. Because if you had come to me and said and said, okay, come and join this thing, and it's going to be a 50-year diffusion to actually get to where we're wanting, I would have gone, I don't know. Yeah, I'm busy. I'm doing other stuff. What I want to do, though, is to give people a right-sized target so that their diffusion actually is in, 7 to 10 years. Um, if they follow the steps, and I can go through what those are. But now that we actually have some data, we can start making better guesses as to what the diffusion curve might be into different populations.
One question I would like to add is between 2020 and maybe 23 or something, because you can see it in the curve, did COVID block it out, that far fewer people were moving, and you had this process
That was
slowing down, or the opposite?
Opposite. Absolutely opposite. Absolutely opposite. So you actually can see that the slope of that curve early on gets steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper. And of course, it's in actuality, this is smoothed out. In actuality, it's almost like a stair step function, right? You get like these large shakeups in the larger society, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get this gigantic inflow, and then you have kind of a lagger. So I actually think that we overshot. If anything, we overshot just because COVID. There's so many people who are libertarian, and they say, I really want liberty, but this is good enough. That my neighbors are never going to turn against me. My government is reasonable. I'll just vote the guys out. They never do anything to, and all of a sudden they saw they could be the next Anne Frank. They could be the next Tutsis and Hutus, being killed in the street. They didn't realize what we understand about the Milgram experiment, that all these people who are nice to your face, if they are not libertarian, will kill you when they are ordered to. And so, the things that we saw during COVID was a big wake-up call to a lot of libertarians who liked the idea of Free State Project, and they were going, I would do that, but it's not really that bad. I don't really care. Now, we're in a little bit of a hiatus right now because things haven't gotten bad again, and people go, oh, okay. So there was a pipeline. We accelerated that pipeline into New Hampshire, and it was crazy here. And that's when I was running my bus tours, because we would get 20 or 30 people going, hey, I want to move here, and so I would load them on a bus and take them around and show them what we're doing. So we shot through that pipeline. And now people go, oh, I think it'll be okay. Well, we're going into an election where we know there's going to be gigantic shenanigans. We know that a large part of the population, whichever way it goes, is not going to believe it. We know that whatever the outcome is, there's going to be people screeching. We know there's going to be anarcho-tyranny of cities burning again. And I'm going, okay. Get here now. I keep telling people, I know that you're thinking it'd be a pain in the ass. I know that you're thinking it's going to cost you a lot to get a house. Think how much of a pain in the ass and how high the cost is when everyone's panicking moving here, right? It's kind of like Bitcoin. When do you want to buy Bitcoin?
Yeah, I already have a couple of questions in my head, and I think we are close to going through numbers, but to be able to concentrate more, let me take a quick break, go to the bathroom, and then I think we should dive deep into details, because then I think there will be the comparison between like not only specific numbers, but also like the mindset. I think already for the what Americans normally move from one state to the other, like more easy than Germans.
Mhm.
They are not used to do that much, and like in the last couple of years, there were like a lot of Californians moving to Texas and stuff like that. That's like where the jobs are, the Americans just go. In Germany, people are not used to do that. They live in their small state, and where they are used to be located, and they hardly any ever move from there.
Mm.
It's just like that's mindset. Of course, this is changing, but slowly. And I mean, you give me that curve, and I still think it's hard to predict because it's individual, right?
Mhm.
Like
Oh,
what you
yeah.
just said, like even for COVID, oh, it's not that bad, and suddenly it becomes more bad, and then you
Mhm.
get used to the new situation, and then you just say, well, this is still not that bad, and so
Sure, sure.
it's difficult to
Yeah,
say
but
where it's
but but
going.
but that is true of all innovations. You know,
Yes, of
this curve.
course.
We rode this curve for the internet, for computers, for TVs, for flat screens, for
Sure.
cell
This is why
phones.
I
For
want to dive into details. So
okay.
let me take a quick break.
So the Free State has had 20 years. My best guess is that we have another 30 years before we finished our first blush um, diffusion. Remember, we're trying to get to 2.5 to 3% of active libertarians in the state. We're assuming a base population of about half a percent, and then we're adding another 2%. But as I pointed out, we're actually in. If I'm correct, we're in a part that will see additional acceleration. And what's really nice is that every migrant that we get here adds additional liberty, and it really is multiplicative. So we've built so much infrastructure. I've built infrastructure since I've been here, and I relied on the infrastructure that the previous people had built. I mentioned that we have 7 different Liberty clubhouses. We have all these different organizations. We have hundreds of groups that are doing all these different things. We have political groups and community groups and family groups and women groups and just religious groups. We have all these different groups. Um, and so we get another liberty activist, and they're opening up whole new areas and being able to utilize the systems that we have. So it really does. It is accelerant. Um, a big area though for us is to stop authoritarians moving in. You see that on our Twitter, where we laud a lot about how terrible this liberty is that's happening in New Hampshire, and how socialists really don't want to move here, and it's just a terrible place for them. And we do have the state swap that helps the socialists move out. And every time that we get complaints and people bemoaning how terrible it is that humans are freer here in New Hampshire than they are anywhere else in the world, we advertise that. And we advertise that basically to the population we want to move here, but also very much so to the population that we want to not move here. We want them to understand this is a terrible place if you hate freedom. We're the free staters, and the people who are on the opposite side are the free haters.
Yeah.
And so we want a lot fewer free haters. We want fewer free haters moving in. We want free haters moving out. And then we also are very concerned with preventing authoritarianism and how to stop that. Now there's an ebb and flow. We don't have enough people here yet. We don't have enough concentration yet to be on a continuous improvements curve. So we'll have successes, then we'll have fallbacks, and all this type of stuff. And we know this, and we're planning around it. But one of the big dangers we have here is that we are playing a political game. And we've seen this with a number of liberty representatives. When they come here, they're coming from states, and they were big libertarians there, and they come here, and all of a sudden they're now in office, and they're actually passing laws, and something happens to them that I don't know what happens. It's you get into those rooms, and people start thinking that they can control other people's lives, and everyone's coming to beg them and supplicate them, and they start turning authoritarian. So we have groups here that kind of beat up on them. Say, hey, what the heck are you thinking you're doing? And it is sad to see, but hopefully we have enough people to kind of say, hey, it's time for you to maybe take a break, get away from Concord, where our state capital is, go back and start farming, and go back and start living your life. We need to put another person who's a little bit more liberty in there. So we're hoping to get a lot more libertarians here, and of course Germans are at a premium. We love Germans because they are darn serious. Lucas, I think, who's a friend of yours, he's had a gigantic impact here, and most of our foreigners are pretty impactful. So that's kind of where we are.
Can you go a little bit more into detail on how you tell the people who are trying to be authoritarian, who want to make laws and stuff, preventing them from doing that? Because that's what a lot of people in Germany who are in libertarian parties think about all the time. How do we prevent on becoming corrupt?
Yeah, well, so the bill that I worked on, which I worked 4 years to get this thing in front of the House, it's the medical aid in dying. And as I mentioned, from a deontological perspective, from an ethical perspective, this is a underlying principle: who owns your body? And if you have to ask permission, if you have to beg and supplicate your master to get to be able to buy a medicine that you and then be able to ingest the medicine to end your body really belongs to your master. So it's one of those kind of like things that really separates the Republicans from the Liberty Republicans. And I put it in there knowing that was happening. I didn't realize to the extent to which the Liberty Republicans, Liberty Republicans, of course, we had really good Liberty Republicans who backed it and supported it and really worked hard and worked across the aisle and really worked to get that thing done. But we had some other people who were, they're more conservatarian and they're more religious, fundamental, and they're kind of libertarian in name only at this point. And then we have, I mentioned we have the organization that grades these people. And we had gigantic fights over whether the medical aid in dying should be one of the things that they're graded on as a liberty bill. And of course, I'm going, well, how could it not be a liberty bill? It's about self-ownership. What are you talking about? And the people who basically, kind of had slipped over into that conservative authoritarian area, they were just outraged because that was going to hurt their liberty rating. And so we had a number of battles and fights and stuff like that, but the organization held true, and said, no, this is absolute. As a matter of fact, there was one person who is, he's very much a conservatarian. He does some really good bills, but they have to be kind of conservative based, and he just made this argument, and he's got some power. He made the argument, and he was basically laughed out of the room. I was going, what the heck are you talking about? So we actually have people who are looking over their shoulder, and and that's just an organization that works on liberty and trying to hold the feet to the fire of the representatives. We also have people who are outside of that looking at those organizations and looking at the politicians. And I mentioned a little bit of the internecine wars, and we do get those because a lot of times the political people say, "Well, I have to do this for this political reason and stuff," and of course the people who say, "Hey, you are you are undermining liberty philosophy." And we have that battle, and I think that's an important discussion to have. It's a little bit frustrating on both sides, but I have to tell you, I hated going into those legislative buildings and these people. It's not about principle, and when you go in there, it's about, oh, I know your uncle, and he got someone's nephew a job, and therefore you ought to support my bill. And I'm going, is that really how this thing's done? And it's so grimy and so dirty. So I understand it's hard when you get in there, but we have a large enough population that, and remember, we have the most rabid libertarians here, right? So as much as they complain, we're there to serve. We're there to help them remember that there's a line here, and that we're not authoritarians. We're allied with the Republicans on most bills, of the Democrats on some bills, but we're not authoritarians. We are a totally different approach.
Got it. All right. Where are we? Shall we make a cut and take it to a second video at this point?
Sure. I would love to actually find out from Europeans and Germans kind of what they think of this and how they think that they might be able to apply this type of concentration strategy themselves. Would they be interested in doing that? What they see the obstacles are, and that type of thing. I would love to get some sort of feedback, and I can tailor the rest of the talk to that.